This is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm host Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. European ministers are in Copenhagen to discuss what security guarantees could be offered to Ukraine to ensure that if an end to the war is brokered with Russia, it will remain. The meeting comes just a day after a deadly missile strike on Kyiv, killing at least 23 people. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins has more.
Days after Russia pounded the Ukrainian capital Kyiv with a violent missile and drone strike, killing dozens, European ministers have met in Copenhagen to discuss what security guarantees and support can be offered the war-torn country as it weathers another year of Russian aggression. The White House has come out stating that it is upset by this recent attack, with various European ministers such as Poland's own top diplomat Radosław Sikorski stating that this attack should only mobilise more European support to the front lines, as well as supporting civilians, particularly in the capital of Kyiv. Now, ministers have all underscored the importance of European support, particularly the EU's High Representative Kaja Kallas, whose office of the European Union delegation in Kyiv was significantly damaged by this attack occurring late Wednesday evening. TVP World asked her, as well as security guarantees, whether immediate support needs to be sent to Ukraine to ensure that it is supported from future attacks.
Desperately need ammunition, they desperately need air defense, all these things. So this is also something what we need to discuss right now. When it comes to security guarantees, of course, we are talking about the day after, but as I said, it's not close if you look at what Putin is doing.
So what is Poland doing, particularly with security guarantees? The Polish Prime Minister, Donald Tusk, has previously ruled out sending Polish troops to Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping effort. However, we spoke to Poland's Secretary of State, Paweł Zelenskyy, who is here on behalf of Warsaw. We asked him what Warsaw's contribution to these future efforts would resemble. He stated it would be logistical support, as well as offering Polish air bases to Ukrainian aviation, as well as those forces there. However, he stated that the real element that will deter future Russian aggression requires strengthening Ukraine's army itself.
The best guarantee for Ukraine is supporting development of its armed forces, and that is also the area we are concentrated on.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has stated that he expects the security guarantee package to be unveiled as early as next week. However, he took to social media late Thursday night asking for a definition of what this could resemble, stating that he needs support on the ground, in the sky, at sea to deter Russian aggression. Of course, the big question here is what those guarantees, those inputs will resemble, but the existential question guiding all of these talks, as well as these wafer-thin ceasefire peacetime efforts spearheaded by the US, is whether it will be enough to stem Russia's expansionist appetites now and into the future. Angela Skujins from Copenhagen for TVP World.
Speaking with TVP World, Ukrainian MP Oleksiy Goncharenko addressed the consequences of the strikes on Kyiv, emphasizing that it clearly demonstrates Russia's unwillingness to end the war. He also further reinforced the urgent need for peace in Ukraine.
I hope so. I hope so that the world will respond on these brutal acts and absolute barbaric attacks. And we hope that there will be more sanctions. But also we hope that Europe will react, because we wait today a lot from the United States. But European countries can do more. And specifically, in the first place, they can seize Russian frozen assets. It's hundreds of billions of euros, first of all in Belgium, but also in other European countries, which are frozen but not seized. If we would have this money today, Ukraine could buy weapons, Europe can buy weapons for us for this money. This money can be used to help people who are suffering every day in Ukraine from Russian attacks. Who lost their apartments and houses and so on. The signal is clear. Russia wants to continue to kill people. Russia wants to continue the war. Russia doesn't want any peace. All of this is a game which they play with President Trump and all this, but reality is deadly attacks, killing of innocent civilian people, including children. This is Russia, and they're not gonna change, and they're not gonna stop themselves. So the only way for us to stop it, that they should be stopped by civilized world.
Germany has ruled out the possibility of direct talks between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Chancellor Friedrich Merz made the statement during a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron.
We want to talk about the big questions of our time together, because we have some tasks that we can only solve together. Unfortunately, this includes Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. We have to deal with this topic again today, and against the backdrop of the fact that there obviously will not be a meeting between President Zelenskyy and President Putin, in contrast to what was agreed between Trump and Putin last week.
Poland has adopted its 2026 draft budget, allocating a record 46.9 billion euros to defense. That brings defense spending to 4.8% of GDP, edging closer to NATO's 5% target.
The draft budget, approved by the cabinet on Thursday, singles out security as the top priority for the country. Viewing the war in neighboring Ukraine as a potential threat to its own security, Poland has significantly ramped up its defense capabilities in the last 3 years. Currently, Warsaw already devotes the highest share of its GDP to defense among all NATO countries, a move that has often earned the country praise from the most vocal advocates for higher military spending, including the US.
In this budget, we plan to spend 200 billion zloty on Poland's security and defense, and that is what it must cost. This 200 billion zloty is not an abstraction, it is an enormous amount of money. In percentage terms, it is one of the highest shares of defense spending in national budgets worldwide. But we know why we are doing it. The grim commentary on our decision was last night in Ukraine. Unfortunately, the war there is gaining momentum. All the illusions of many world leaders that 5 meetings would be enough to end the war show that they do not know Russia, that they do not know Putin. This war is ongoing and will continue. That is why we did not hesitate and will continue to act this way.
Polish President Karol has seen a 5.5 percentage point drop in public trust, according to the latest poll by the Ibris Research Center. In a previous survey, Nawrocki held the top spot, but has now been overtaken by Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Radosław Sikorski. Sikorski now has a trust of 41.8% of respondents, while Nawrocki follows closely at 41.3%. The third most trusted politician is Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, Nawrocki's former presidential opponent, with 39.9%. While Nawrocki recorded the steepest decline, both Sikorski and Trzaskowski also saw drops in support. The Polish Ministry of National Defense has decided to suspend military participation in air shows until further notice due to the F-16 crash in Rodom. On Thursday, a Polish F-16 fighter jet crashed, killing a renowned pilot during a training flight ahead of the 2025 Rodom International Air Show. Following the F-16 crash in Rodom, which claimed the life of Major Maciej Slab-Krakowian, some experts and politicians have begun publicly questioning the purpose of air shows. Poland's top military officer, General Wiesław Kukula, weighed in on the matter on social media. The chief of the General Staff of the Polish Armed Forces admitted that he had many doubts, but in the end was convinced that such events make sense. Kukula wrote that the late pilot spent many months trying to convince him that participations in air shows was important, as they show a country's military prowess. The Ministry of National Defense declined to comment on whether the ban will be permanent and suggests that the decision should be made by the military. Speaking with TVP World, Christian Zionch, a former F-16 pilot, weighed in on the tragic incident that took place ahead of the Rodom Air Show.
There was the finest Polish fighter pilots. There was a rising star of Polish military aviation. Fine pilots, instructor pilots, and the future of Polish Air Force. The entire comradeship of Polish military aviation is in a deep sorrow tonight, because this young guy was the future of Polish Air Force. And the mistake that he has done is a mistake that we have paid the biggest price. He died. But unfortunately, it looks like it was his mistake. It looks like the pilot made a fatal error and he started maneuver too low.
Over 30 journalists have been attacked in Serbia over the past 2 months. Violence has come from both government supporters and law enforcement. Reporters Without Borders have documented 34 physical attacks on journalists covering anti-government protests. In one of the most severe cases, 2 reporters were beaten with metal bars by supporters of the ruling SNS party. The protests began nearly 10 months ago, opposing a state capture and corruption. While initially peaceful, they have grown more violent in recent months. Poland's national basketball team has won the inaugural match of the Eurobasket Championship against Slovenia, 105-95. Now, it was the first time in 40 years the Poles scored over 100 points in the tournament. The Polish team stayed ahead of the Slovenians in Katowice throughout the game. In the first half, the advantage was razor thin, with the Poles missing their star forward Jeremy Sohan, while Slovenia's top player Luka Doncic scored over a third of his team's points. Despite that, Poland pulled ahead with a strong third quarter, leaving the Slovenian trailing by 10 points. The victory came as a surprise, as Slovenia had been favored to win. Poland now has 4 group games remaining and is set to face Israel this Saturday. And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. Before more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.